Hey everyone, thanks for coming back. The video today is going to be a little bit, maybe a rant of how kind of fucked up our mindset is in American society. West, is this a Western mindset? Maybe. But I'm going to bring it down to my own community and even more narrower to um, where I practice yoga, my own yoga community. And this isn't, this is constructive criticism in order for us to learn because we're always about this channel. I hope to make it always about learning. So today I want to just talk about our outcomes focused mindset in American culture, in our society, in our schools. A few years ago, I was a high school teacher and I took a leave of absence to travel the world and teach Bikram yoga. I lived in different Bikram yoga studios in Australia, in Europe, all over. And I decided to not go back to my job after having traveled and practiced this yoga for a year. I had already been practicing and teaching, but I took this leave of absence to travel, do a little walkabout, and I ended up not going back to teaching. And when I came back from my Landscapes for Learning adventure, traveling the world, teaching Bikram yoga, I wrote my own autobiography. I had always written in a journal as a tool for self-study, for self-realization. Not intentionally so, but I just started to write when I was pregnant with my first son, which is about 27 years ago. And it was just a therapeutic tool for me to articulate how I was feeling, what I was thinking, to get it down on paper so I didn't have to burden other people and to learn about myself, ultimately. And just as a creative outlet, sometimes I wrote stories, sometimes I wrote ideas, whatever. Writing worked for me. It got me to sit still, be in the moment, kind of reflect. So I did that for many, many years. And so I took all of my journals and sort of reflected on them from the many years of my life. And my children were older when I went on this traveling year leave of absence and kind of off on their own. My youngest was in college and the others had graduated. And so I had less responsibility for them and I could focus a little bit more on myself. And I had always been teaching, so always other-centered and really managing a lot of other people's energy. And so I got to give myself a little bit more of my own energy and time and attention. Anyway, I wrote an autobiography and I called it It's Not About the Grades. And the reason it's Landscapes for Learning Beyond Schooling was the subtitle. So it's not about the grades. And why I named my own autobiography that was because the theme is unconditional love. Conditional love versus unconditional love. And if you think about it, when we are schooled in our school systems, we're outcomes focused. We're grades focused. And the problem being that's conditional. That's conditional improvement or approval. Conditional approval from children by adults, right? So we go into schools and we go into being told what to do, how to do it, and then we are assessed on our ability to meet those expectations by people who are older and obviously more powerful than we are, and we're entrusted to their care. And some of us get really good, responsible, moral, warm, kind teachers who are focused on teaching us as we are, as little human beings, mind-body systems. And then we have other teachers who are dysregulated and academic focused and whatever, and we get some kind of lousy teaching. But overall, the system is structured around assessment and grades. This is a conditional exchange. And so what I saw when I was a high school English teacher with, students' identities had been shaped. By the time I got these kids at 16, 17, and 18, I taught mostly juniors and seniors. I taught all grades, but mostly the older kids. And they would come to my classroom, and the first thing we would do senior year is write the college essay, which asked them really to write about themselves and what strength, basically, why a college would want this person, what's unique, special strength about them. And almost every, and I mean 99.9% of my students struggled with this essay to turn inward and reflect on who they were as a human being and what their value was. And since they had been conditioned to think that their value was a GPA or a member of a sports team or a good kid or a naughty kid who'd been disciplined too much, or a sick kid or a special ed kid, or you name it, the labels, right? The conditions, their identities were based on their social conditions, their ability to meet certain expectations. And that's how they saw who they were and their value. So sad. But this is what we do. We shuffle kids into school. We make them focused on the outcome. And a lot of kids, depending on their personalities and who they are and how they're shaped, their biology and their own parenting before they get to school, some kids are really people pleasers. They really just are, or they're scared and they don't want to get in trouble. And so they work their little asses off to be who everybody else around them expects them to be. And it's heartbreaking to think that so many kids were not loved just for who they are, that they had to earn that love, that there was conditions attached to praise and congratulations, and that's different than love. So my autobiography is named It's Not About the Grades, Landscapes for Learning Beyond Schooling, because I really think the mental health crisis and people's, a lot of Americans, the problem with obesity and just self-neglect and this overwhelming stress and being manipulated and this busy economic demanding life and the multiple complexities of our society and all the demands that they put on people and causing so much illness and dis-ease, right? It's so difficult to be regulated and resourced and have resources and to know how to use them and to create a life and be creative and constructive with one's challenges and sufferings. It's very hard to do in our society because I think we've been conditioned and inculcated predominantly through the school systems to be loved conditionally. And we're not taught to unconditionally know and love ourselves. So I left education. I wrote this autobiography. My autobiography, I am a reflection and a product of that same system. I went through school. I loved school. I remember being a little kid and being super expressive and always writing poems for my mother. But I was also an outdoor kid, and I would climb trees, and I was athletic, and I was lucky. I had two parents and siblings and a nice neighborhood and had the resources. But, one of my parents, I felt conditionally loved. I had to meet certain expectations to get positive feedback, to get positive, to feel loved. And that was rough. And there was a lot of resistance, and I thought there was something wrong with me. But I finally had the realization after I went to high school, became a really good athlete, went to college, almost had a 4.0. I was very intellectual, academic, driven. I was just a product of my upbringing and outcome focused. And I lived that life, and I pushed, and I didn't listen to my body, what it was telling me, and I didn't, I did what was culturally acceptable. I was conditioned deeply. I was a philosophy major, which my parents sort of rejected that. What can you do with that? That's not concrete. You can't make money from that, right? So that kind of thing. And so I felt that that was a rejection of who I was. And it was, because being a philosopher is an expression of who I was. Then wanting to be, um, a writer, or a creative person, or a professor. I thought I wanted to go to school and continue with philosophy, but everything was stacked against me. How is it going to pay my bills? How would I be respectable in the world? And, that kind of thing. Then I got married and had kids, and I was a stay-at-home mom. Again, not, I was a strong woman who was educated. I was supposed to go to work. All of these things, like conditions of I wasn't being who I was supposed to be and expected to be. And so I struggled with a lot of like self-rejection, or trying to like accept myself and be myself. And it was always sort of this uphill battle, until I realized in yoga that it's like you're just who you are, and to see what happens in your life and try not to change anything, and so on and so forth. So had this journey to sort of self-realization and know myself and trust myself and know exactly who I am without condition, right? To love myself unconditionally. And I think this is a path, this is a curriculum, this is a learning experience that's open to everybody. It sort of happened to me by accident. I went to a yoga studio just on a whim. I hated yoga. I thought it was stupid. And it ended up transforming how I saw myself, how I saw the world, everything. So yoga, Bikram yoga, is not focused on outcomes. And back to where I started at the beginning, I'm not critiquing my yoga studio and my fellow yogis or anything like that, but I notice that even the Bikram yoga teachers sometimes don't get it, that it's not outcome focused, it's process oriented practice. We do one step at a time. We focus in the mirror to anchor our attention, to be oriented, and to be safe. We give commands, we use the Bikram yoga dialogue for a reason. Now, when teachers change the dialogue and add words like should, or, kind of shame people for their different manifestations of suffering, sometimes people grab a towel, sometimes people drink too much, sometimes people scratch their itches, they look around. When they are shamed and called out on the different ways that they discharge their discomfort, that creates less safety in the room, and the nervous systems in that room, all of the, say, 10 people, 10 nervous systems, neurocept less safety, right? So that makes it difficult for them to cultivate interoceptive awareness, to focus on themselves, to be reassured that their environment is safe enough that they don't have to focus outward externally. They can focus all their attention into what's happening in their body and mind to know themselves. The practice is self-study for self-realization. Bikram and Rajashri, his ex-wife, specifically have said self-study for self-realization. You need a safe environment, you need a structure and a discipline and organization and safety, so that people's nervous systems have that viscerally sense safety, like this teacher is not going to call me out, shame me, tell me I should or should not be doing X. We give commands. We say, right hand out, palm facing up, elbow touching the body. Right hand out to the right, grab your right foot, hold from the inside of your ankle, and so on and so on. You do what you can, one step at a time. Your attention, you're hearing the words, you're looking in the mirror, anchor your focus in the present, and you do one step at a time. Now, if you don't have a right hand, or your right hand is broken, you can still do yoga. You can lift it up, bring it out to the right, drop it down. You can't grab your foot. No big deal. Okay, no big deal. You do what you can, you try the right way, and that's all. Listen to all the cues in breathing. I mean, just follow the commands, and you do what you can, whoever you are, in those moments. It's so simple, but we Westerners, with our outcome focus, because we've been conditioned, earlier I was talking about schooling, conditioned, conditional attention, conditional love. Your ego gets shaped. Like, I'm a good yoga person, I'm a good yogi if I can do all of the postures without falling out, keep my balance, and I'm compared to everyone else around me, I'm better, I'm doing great, I'm really good at this, and my ego loves that. I feel like I have value because of an outcome that I achieved. It's not your fault. We're conditioned that way. And to a certain extent, it's not horrible. Nothing's good or bad. It just is. It's when that's excessive and it causes dysfunction and suffering. Okay, there's nothing wrong with being outcomes focused to a certain degree. But when it becomes dysfunctional from overdoing it, or an excess or a loss of balance with process-oriented learning and embodied learning and unconditional acceptance. Okay, do you see where I'm going? It's a balance. So I'm as competitive as the next person. Human beings are competitive. Like, we compete to survive. And play has an element of competition in it. It's just when it gets excessive and you attach your identity to it as a winner or a loser or healthy or broken, right? It's when it becomes excessive. But unfortunately, I think the school system contributes to a big part of our kids' identity development as needing to be achievers in the world instead of love as an embodied being. And I think it's a problem. And I'm trying to swing, I'm trying to promote awareness of this and see if we can bring things back into balance for the health of our next generations, of our young people and all people. So my videos are primarily for anyone who's a teacher, a yoga teacher, a Pilates teacher, someone who works at a gym, anyone who's working with people and is engaged in a learning process and for healthy development and healthy learning for people, whether it's an academic or physical or whatever, or parenting, coaching, etc., mental health, therapy, whatever. That unconditional love is so important. People, we humans need to connect socially. We need to know that someone loves us. And that we only can self-regulate when we co-regulate. And if we didn't grow up with that kind of parenting, that parent met our needs and we understood how to self-soothe over time, you know, we need to make up for that later in life. And there's ways to do that, and it's possible. But this overemphasis on the conditions of grades and achievement, and in school for kids, and even in the yoga studio, where I noticed it this morning. Like, I don't want to reinforce those patterns. When you come to yoga, when you step out of the American mindset in your work week and you come to yoga, it's yoga. It's the opposite. And it provides the balance to that Western go, ignore that I have to go to the bathroom, ignore that I have been sitting for 4 hours and haven't moved because I'm doing my job and I'm powering through, because that's culturally how we manage stress, which is why we're so stressed and dysregulated. One of the reasons, many reasons why. And when you come to yoga, it's listening to your body, listening to those cues, listening to what it needs. So